Imagine waking up one morning and realizing something has changed. Not outside your window, not in your house, not even in your bank account. The world looks exactly the same, but you are different. You reach for your phone, you check your investments, and then you see it. The money your investments generated this month is more than the money your job paid you. You stare at the screen for a few seconds. You refresh it. Maybe there's a mistake. You check again, same number. And suddenly, you realize something that you once thought was impossible. Your money worked harder than you did. And for the first time in your life, you don't need your next paycheck to keep your life moving. That doesn't mean you quit your job, not yet, but something inside you becomes strangely quiet because for years you lived with one invisible question hanging over your head. What happens if I stop working? Now the question has changed. What happens if I keep working? And that is where your life begins to change. Chapter 1. The morning everything feels different. The alarm rings at the same time. The same room, the same bed, the same ceiling, the same morning light coming through the curtain. But you don't jump out of bed anymore. You sit there and for a moment you do nothing because your brain is processing something it has never experienced before. You are no longer working because you have to survive. You are working because you choose to. There is a huge difference between those two things. For years, your salary was the engine of your life. Salary comes in, bills go out, food, rent, transport, subscriptions, family expenses, unexpected problems, and then another month begins. You weren't necessarily poor, you weren't necessarily miserable, but you were trapped inside a system where stopping meant everything stopped, and that creates a strange kind of pressure. Even when you're sitting on a beach, part of your mind is thinking about Monday. Even when you're spending time with your family, part of your mind is thinking about work. Even when you're sleeping, some part of your brain knows that tomorrow you have to wake up and do it again. But now something is different. Your investments have started producing enough income to cover more than your basic needs. And suddenly, Monday doesn't feel so powerful anymore. You get out of bed, you make your coffee, you look outside, and you smile. Not because you're rich, not because you suddenly became a millionaire, but because you finally understand what financial freedom actually feels like. It's not about buying everything, it's about knowing you don't have to. Chapter 2. The first time you notice the difference, you go to work, same building, same elevator, same people, same conversations. Someone complains about the commute, someone complains about their manager, someone talks about how exhausted they are, someone is counting the days until payday, and normally you would be doing the same thing. But today, you just listen. You don't feel superior. You don't feel better than them. You simply feel different because the thing controlling everyone around you doesn't control you in the same way anymore. Your paycheck is no longer your only source of security. Your investments are becoming another employee, except this employee doesn't take holidays. It doesn't ask for a promotion. It doesn't call in sick. It doesn't care if you're sleeping. It keeps working quietly in the background, day after day, month after month, year after year. And that's when you discover one of the most powerful ideas about money. The goal isn't to make money once. The goal is to build something that keeps making money without requiring your constant presence. That's the difference between earning and building wealth. Chapter 3. You stop chasing every promotion. Before this point, a promotion felt enormous. A higher position, a bigger salary, more responsibility, more recognition. You wanted it. You needed it. Maybe you even spent years trying to prove yourself, staying late, answering messages after work, taking on extra responsibilities, saying yes when you wanted to say no, because somewhere inside your mind, you believe that your next raise would finally make you feel secure. But now, something strange happens. Your manager tells you about another opportunity, more responsibility, longer hours, more pressure. And the old version of you would immediately say, absolutely. But this time, you pause, you think about your life, your time, your health, your family, your freedom, and you ask a completely different question. Is this worth my life? That question changes everything because when your investments become stronger, you you stop automatically trading more hours for more money. You start trading money for time, and time becomes more valuable than money. Chapter 4. Your first real taste of freedom. One afternoon, you receive a message. A friend asks, want to go somewhere this weekend? Normally, you would check your schedule. Maybe your boss needs you. Maybe you have deadlines. Maybe you can't afford the trip. Maybe you already made plans around work. But this time, you simply say, sure, no complicated explanation, no stress, no calculations. We just go. And somewhere during that trip, while you're sitting outside watching the sunset, you realize something. You aren't thinking about Monday. You aren't checking your work email. You aren't worrying about your next paycheck. You're just there, present, and suddenly you understand the real luxury. It's not the expensive car. It's not the giant house. It's not the designer clothes. It's being able to say, I want to be here. And actually being here. Chapter 5. Then something unexpected happens. You start becoming more patient, not just with money, with people, with life, with yourself. Because financial pressure makes people impatient. You want results immediately. You want the promotion now. You want the business to succeed now. You want your investments to grow now. You want everything now. But when you've spent years building assets, you begin to understand something most people never learn. Compounding is boring until it becomes unbelievable. At first, nothing seems to happen. You invest, you wait, you invest again, you wait. The numbers move slowly. Sometimes they fall, sometimes they rise, sometimes months pass and it feels like you're getting nowhere. And then years later, you look back and realize the biggest part of the journey wasn't one brilliant decision. It was staying in the game. You didn't become financially independent because you found a magical investment. You became financially independent because you consistently bought freedom long before you could feel it. Chapter 6. The day your investments make more than your job. And then comes the moment. The moment this entire story was leading toward. You check your numbers. Your investments generated more this period. Then your job paid you. You sit back. You don't celebrate immediately because Something about it feels almost unreal. You remember the beginning, the small amounts, the sacrifices, the times you wanted to spend everything, the times you looked at other people buying things you couldn't afford, the moments when you wondered, is this even worth it? And now your past decisions are sending money back to you. That's when you realize you didn't miss out. You were building something. Every time you invested instead of spending, you were buying a small piece of your future. Every time you delayed gratification, you were giving your future self more choices. And now, your future self is standing in front of you. Chapter 7. But you don't quit. This is where the story gets interesting because everyone imagines financial freedom as the moment you quit your job. You walk into your manager's office, drop your resignation letter on the desk, walk away, music starts playing, you get into a car and disappear into the sunset. But real financial freedom doesn't always look like that. Sometimes you keep working, you just stop being afraid of losing the job. That's a completely different feeling. You can disagree with your boss, you can refuse unreasonable demands, you can leave a toxic environment, you can take a break, you can change careers, you can start a business, you can spend more time with your family, not because you're fearless, but because you have options. And options are one of the greatest forms of wealth. Chapter 8. People start noticing. Eventually, someone notices. Maybe it's a friend. You don't talk about your investments much. You never wanted to, but they notice that you're different. You're not obsessed with every paycheck. You're not constantly complaining about money. You don't panic every time something unexpected happens. They ask, how do you seem so relaxed? You laugh because they don't know the story. They didn't see the boring years. They didn't see the sacrifices. They didn't see the nights when you wanted to spend everything. They didn't see the discipline. They only see the result. And that's something you eventually learn about wealth. People see the tree. They rarely see the years you spent watering the seed. Chapter 9. Your lifestyle doesn't change as much as people expect. Here's the strange part. You don't suddenly buy everything you've ever wanted. You could, but you don't because after years of investing, you realize something. Buying something feels good. Owning freedom feels better. You still enjoy nice things. You still travel. You still eat at good places. You still buy things you genuinely value. But you're no longer buying things to prove something. That's the difference. Before, you might have bought something because you wanted people to think you were successful. Now, you buy something because it makes your life better. You stop asking, what will people think? And start asking, does this actually make my life better? That one question can save you from years of unnecessary spending. Chapter 10. The fear doesn't completely disappear. But here's the part nobody talks about. Even after your investments become powerful, you still worry. Markets can fall, plans can fail, unexpected expenses can appear, life can change. Financial freedom doesn't mean you never feel fear again. It means fear no longer has complete control over you. You still respect money, you still manage risk, you still diversify, you still avoid reckless decisions. Because wealth can disappear just as quickly as it can be built if you become careless. You learn that the goal isn't to become invincible. The goal is to become resilient. You don't need a life where nothing goes wrong. You need a life where one thing going wrong doesn't destroy everything. Chapter 11. You start buying time. Then something even more powerful happens. You start spending money differently. Not necessarily more, differently. You pay for convenience when it genuinely gives you time. You travel to see people you love. You take days off without feeling guilty. You learn things you've always wanted to learn. You exercise. You read. You build. You create. You sleep. You sit quietly. Things that once seemed unproductive suddenly become valuable because you realize something terrifying. You can always make more money. You cannot make another hour. And once you understand that, your definition of wealth changes forever. Chapter 12. You begin to ask the big question. One morning, you're sitting alone. No meetings, no notifications, no deadlines, and a strange question enters your mind. If money wasn't the main reason I worked, what would I actually do? At first, you don't know. That's normal because most people spend decades answering a different question. What job can pay me enough? Very few people ask, what would I build if I didn't need the paycheck? And now, you finally have permission to find out. Maybe you start a business, maybe you create content, maybe you teach, maybe you travel, maybe you build something nobody understands, maybe you continue your career because you genuinely love it, maybe you work 4 hours instead of 10, maybe you spend more time with your children, maybe you simply live quietly. There is no single answer. Because financial freedom isn't about telling you what to do. It's about giving you the ability to choose. Chapter 13. The most powerful moment. Years later, you find an old photo. You, standing somewhere. You look younger. You remember that version of yourself. The person who worried about money. The person who wanted freedom. The person who kept investing even when the results were invisible. And you realize something. That person didn't know how the story would end. They just kept going. They couldn't see the future. They couldn't guarantee the investments would grow. They couldn't know exactly what opportunities would appear. But they understood one simple idea. If you consistently build assets instead of constantly consuming everything you earn, time can become your greatest financial advantage. You look at the old photo again and you smile because the person in that picture was quietly building the life you're living now. Chapter 14. What actually changed? And here's the biggest twist. Your investments didn't change your life as much as you thought they would. They changed your relationship with life. You became harder to manipulate. A bad boss couldn't scare you as easily. A bad month couldn't destroy your confidence. A temporary setback didn't feel like the end of the world. You stopped comparing your life to everyone else's. You stopped needing every purchase. You stopped needing everyone's approval. You became comfortable saying no, and maybe most importantly, you became comfortable saying yes. Yes to experiences. Yes to opportunities. Yes to people you love. Yes to your own dreams. That's what wealth really gave you. Not things, choices. Chapter 15. The life you never post online. There is another side of financial freedom that nobody sees. The quiet moments, waking up without an alarm, having breakfast slowly, taking your parents somewhere, watching your children grow up, going for a walk in the middle of the day, um, reading a book without checking the clock, taking a random afternoon off, working on something because you enjoy it, helping someone without worrying about what it costs you, sitting somewhere beautiful and realizing you don't need to rush back. None of these moments look impressive on social media. There is no luxury car, no mention, no giant logo, no dramatic success story. But these moments might be the real reward because eventually you realize you weren't trying to become rich. You were trying to become free. Chapter 16, the real POV. So imagine your life from that point forward. Your job still exists, bills still exist, problems still exist. The world hasn't changed, but the relationship between you and money has changed. Before you worked for money, then your money started working alongside you. And eventually, your money became strong enough to give you choices. That's the moment you stop asking, how much can I earn? And start asking, how much of my life do I want to trade for money? That is a completely different question, and it can change everything. Final chapter, the future version of you. Tonight, before you sleep, imagine something. Imagine the version of you 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Maybe the number is different. Maybe the path is different. Maybe your investments don't grow exactly as planned. But imagine that you stayed consistent. You saved, you invested, you learned, you avoided unnecessary debt, you increased your skills, you protected your downside, you kept going when progress felt invisible. And one day you check your investments and you realize they've become bigger than your paycheck. You don't scream, you don't jump, you simply sit there quietly because you understand what that number really represents. It represents thousands of small decisions, the things you didn't buy, the patience nobody saw, the years nobody applauded, the discipline nobody knew about. And suddenly, you understand something. Freedom was never one big event. It was built one decision at a time, one investment at a time, one delayed purchase at a time, 1 year at a time. And one day you wake up, the alarm rings, you look at your phone. Your investments have made more than your job. You put the phone down, you look outside, and for the first time, you don't feel like you're running toward the next paycheck. You're simply living, and maybe that's what you were really working toward all along. Not a bigger house, not a more expensive car, not a number that impresses strangers, but the ability to wake up one morning and know that your time finally belongs to you. Because when your investments make more than your job, the biggest thing you gain isn't money. It's the freedom to decide what your life is actually worth. And once you have that, you'll never look at money or time the same way again.